G'day everyone. I've been fitting flush mounted frameless glass to FrAnKeNInTeR. I'll talk about it more a bit later. Why don't you get yourself a cool adult beverage or a warm cuppa, a comfy chair, put your feet up, and we'll talk about it more when you come back. See you then. Did you know that there is absolutely no scientific evidence to prove that your life will improve if you subscribe to my channel? But you should do it anyway. Okay, hope you're comfy. Welcome back. I'm Todd, this is Toxic Garage Customs, and you've got yourself a cold drink. So, I think it looks fantastic. It's not actually fitted though. This is a mock-up stage. This is the old glass, which is safety glass, and I need laminated glass for my engineering purposes for this. So what I have, I've just got it sitting there, really precariously I might say, and I've got electrical tape around the outside just to give the vision of what it's going to look like. It won't have a center bar, which it doesn't at the moment. It'll be sealed through there, but it will look very much like that. This glass is a little bit undersized, so when I get it made, it'll need to be a little bit bigger. But essentially, this is what it's going to look like. Now, why, you might ask? Well, this is what the old seals looked like. They're a bit beyond use, but they're also very chunky. So this is what was seen before, this big chunky mould seal, and I don't think it's terribly nice. Let's have a look at the back. At the back here, I have exactly the same thing done. So, got the glass just sitting there, electrical tape. It will be slightly bigger. You can see, it's going to be quite flush. Previously, it had this big, chunky rubber going around it. And I don't think anyone could really disagree that it looked pretty ugly. This, in fact, is what it did look like. So, rather than have the rubber exposed and visible, it won't have any rubber. It'll have urethane holding it in place and sealing it. Flush fit urethane glued glass. It's about the best way I can describe it. So, what am I doing? I'm going to be fitting flush fit glass to this, and it will be fixed in with urethane. Now, what I need to do is extend this lip just here so that it's a total of 20 millimeters wide. Currently, it's about half that. It's about 10 millimeters wide. So what's going to happen is my glass is going to sit on the face of this. I'm going to leave a 3 millimeter gap between the bodywork and the edge of the glass. And then there'll be 12 millimeters of glass glued or urethaned onto that lip. And then there'll be what's called a foam dam, which is a stick-on foam thing that stops the urethane from oozing out the other side. The glass itself will be primed with a black primer around the edge, about that 20 mil wide. And when I have the glass made to size, it will have a line etched about 20 mil in, so that it gives a really sharp edge to that urethane. So it's a really, really neat finished look. That's all completely fine. And then in the middle here, I'm going to have it V-cut. Well, in fact, it's going to be 2 sheets of glass coming like that because it is a split screen. But rather than have the standard solid metal strip down there, it'll just be glass meeting glass with, I'll sand the edge of the glass with sandpaper, yes, with sandpaper, to make it so that the angle meets, and then that'll just be filled with like a clear silicone. Not all that hard, really. So what I need to do is extend this, and I've tossed over different ideas. Unusually, on the International, the glass actually sits on the back of that with the rubber seal that grabs the glass and grabs this. Like most glass sits on the front. So the reason I mention that is it's a very shallow lip through here. If this lip was pushed back further, then my glass would hopefully sit pretty flush with the body. I don't think I've got much choice without doing massive modifications to this, and I'm not prepared to do that. So what's going to happen is my glass is going to sit on the top of everything that I just said, and it's going to sit out from the body, and it'll probably sit out good 5 mil or so. So I'm hoping it looks okay. I'm hoping it doesn't look funny sticking out, so where my fingers are there, that's sort of about the amount you get to see of the glass on the side. So fingers crossed that it doesn't look funny. Up here it's very shallow, the depression there, so it'll stick out a bit further. So wish me luck. You can see up here, it's actually deeper through here than it is there. I'm going to run with it. I think it's going to look great. I just hope that that edging doesn't stand out and look silly. So we'll see. I think it's going to look great. So what have I got to do? What I am intending to do is do this in 2 pieces. So obviously this is just a piece of metal. It's not the right shape or anything. What I'm going to do is put it behind this existing lip here, and I'll cut it so that it is my 20 mil wide. And then I'm going to drill holes through here to do spot welds, just like these two, like these spot welds here, where there's this cowl section and the part behind it are spot welded together. So there's actually 2 pieces of sheet that join through here. See if I can get some light. A little bit hard to see, but there's 1 piece on the inside, 1 piece on the outside, and they're joined. They're not the perfect alignment, but they join. That's 2 panels that have been spot welded together. So I guess this rule is a good indication. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a strip of metal about 20 mil wide. I'm going to sit it behind there like that, and I'm going to spot weld it in. But then I'm going to cut a second strip that will sit on top of that, which will end up being the same height as the first piece I put in. So the second piece probably only about 10 mil wide or something like that. I might not even cut it exactly the size in the first place. I might trim it up once it's in place, just to get it spot on. So I'm going to have to do this in multiple pieces. So I'll have a long piece here that's about 600 mil long, I think, and then another piece there, one there, one there, one there, one over there, and then some tricky little bits on the corner. So what have we got? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's just initially, and then I guess I'll probably have another 10 pieces to do that second part of it. So lots of cutting of strips, lots of spot welds. What I did consider was actually getting a single piece of metal and folding it like that so that it could sit on the back and join the front there. So just come up and U-shape back. But I think I would have trouble with that, especially since the break that I've got only does 400 mil long. So I'd end up with 1,000 pieces joined together. So I'm doing it in 2 separate pieces. 1, 2, spot weld those together. And I'll just have to, I guess, seam seal the gap between them or something. The reality is it'll be inside and it shouldn't get water on it. And speaking of the inside, typically there is a garnish mold that fixes into some points here. Obviously some of them are rusted out, and it covers the seal on the inside. And specifically, this is what the garnish mold looks like. So it sits around there like that. Now, hopefully I can get it to work that it covers everything that I just spoke of. But the only thing that's going to be a little bit tricky is that it would normally sit back from the windscreen because of the seal. And when I do this, there's not going to be anything holding it back. So I'm hoping that I can still get this to work, look right and everything. Might need a little bit of tweaking, but I think it should be okay. But I'm going to have to go down the path of trying not to overthink that at the moment. I'm going to wing it. Not what I'd recommend generally, but I'm going to wing it. I'm going to do this part, and then I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that I can get this to do its job. Because I'll be able to trial fit all of that, maybe even get it completely installed even before I've got the glass in, because the glass is all going to be glued in from the outside. So I think I'll just get some metal cut and start going with it. Wish me luck. Have 3 strips cut that are 20mm wide. This sheet is 1.2 meters long, so I need 600mm for either side of the windscreen and then about 500mm for either side. I've cut them out of one long strip because it was the most sensible thing to do, and what I did was I just measured in 20mm and then put this here, allowed a mil for the grinder disc, clamped that in place, and I use this as a guide because I don't know, even if you've got a really steady hand, I think it's hard to make a really perfectly straight cut. So I have these, and what I've actually decided is that for the top and bottom, I think I'm going to be able to make it out of one piece and just bend it in the middle. So as long as it doesn't change direction, so I'll have a look at that. I've marked my first strip halfway through, so it's 600mm, and what I'm hoping is that I'm going to be able to just bend it in the middle so that I can get away without cutting it. So let's just use the body. I can mold it to the outside and fit it on the inside. So I think I might be able to do that. Get some clamps, but I think that is going to work just fine. Even if it's not exactly the same distance along, it's not going to be seen, but I think it's pretty close anyway. Let's see how it fits up. Playing around with the fitment here a little bit. So what I've got is over this side, it's pretty good. It's pretty consistent. It's a little bit low there in comparison to this spot, which is a bit higher, in comparison to this, which is a bit higher. So I may be able to tap it down here or bring it up a bit there. I'll have to play with that. On the other side, it would appear that the dash itself has got a little bit of a bulge through it on the inside. What it's doing, as it comes across, it seems to push it up so that it's higher over here. So I'll show you that from inside. And from inside, this is what I'm referring to. It sits pretty good through there, but then it sits up higher there. And I think there's a bulge in the dash there, and it may be because of the corrosion that's been there. It may just be that it wasn't perfect. But I think what I can get away with doing is scribe a line on the bottom of this and literally just grind a bit out of the bottom of this so that it just sits over the top of that bulge, because remember, the garnish mold's going to be there, and then I'll get this to come down, because I'd prefer that the part that is exposed is pretty consistent so that I don't have problems with it being seen once the screen's in. So I think I'll do that. I might move these grips a bit and just clamp it down here and just scribe a mark and start shaping. We'll see how it goes. If I have to, I'll cut it in the middle and release it a bit, but I don't think that's actually a problem at the moment. When I grab this marker and just hold it on the dash and run it along, you can see where it's marking, and that's picking up the bulge in the dash. So if I just take that piece out there, I think I'm going to be able to get it to sit down better at this end. I've got that better. It's not perfect, but it's better, and I can live with that. But something I've just picked up that I hadn't considered is this. When I run a straight edge or a ruler along that part of the screen there, it's not super obvious, but there is a gap right in the middle of the screen there at the 600mm part. Where the old screen was, it juts out a little bit, so it's not actually a flat plane right the way through there. And then if I do it on the other side as well, then we have the same thing. There's a bit of a gap there. Now it could probably be made up with the sealer, but when we look at the top, it's even more obvious. So when we look at the top there, you can see it really peaks out in the middle there, and it does the same thing on both sides. So I think what I'm going to need to do, with the top at least, I think I'm going to cut that, probably cut it there, and just bang it back until I can get a flat plane, so that I can, and then just weld it back up. So I think it needs to be pushed back in a similar distance to what it is there. And I'll probably do the same thing there. Now what's more obvious down here as well is, because there's multiple pieces of sheet metal overlapping there, you can see that's actually quite a distance back from, so if I look through here, we've only got about 2.5 millimeters. When we look through here, it's close to 6 millimeters, and that's not going to work. So, because remember, I'm going to put another piece of metal like that, and then the glass itself will sit on that front piece of metal where the ruler is. So this is just part of the structure, the other part will be in front. And being glass, it needs to be a perfectly flat, straight plane, because while you can bend glass, you can't bend it when you're trying to install it in a windscreen. So I need to check these planes out right the way through. The urethane that I put in, I think will be about 3 mil thick, so there will be some tolerance, but I want to get it as close to perfect as I can. So I'm going to have to cut this, move it, straighten it out. It's no biggie. The two areas I've worked on there would be barely noticeable to anyone if I wasn't just showing it. So what we have here, I ran a cut. You can see where the top of the weld is there. There's no pinholes there, it's just not pretty weld. So I ran a cut from just there, through to just there, and down through there, banged it in, and in some cases I banged the lip back out again. So banged it out in some spots, in, and so on, did the same with the bottom. Now I've actually got a really nice plane through here within the tolerances that I have set, which is about 0.5 millimeter, and I could probably get it better. So I'm happy with that. I've still got to weld up inside here where I cut through. So there's a little bit of a finish there, but I'll deal with that when I'm inside the truck. And perhaps just there, but I think I'm okay. So that's good. That was actually very straightforward. So I'll do that. There's a section of rust over here that I'll replace at some stage, and there's a piece over here that I'll get rid of in this whole process. So the corners, I think, are on a slightly different plane in some spots too. I think that's just going to be panel beading, generally, banging it in or out. It's going to be tricky to get that on the same plane, to check whether it's on the same plane. Perhaps sitting a piece of glass on it will tell me that. So the original glass, get it, pop it up there. If there's a gap, then tap it in, tap it out. So that's coming along really well. I'll get all this sorted, get it all cleaned up, and then I can start putting those strips in. And what I did manage to do was this area here where there was about a 5 mil. I separated them, I ground out. There was actually a little bit of surface rust in there, and squashed them back together. That and taking off that peak, this is now quite consistent through here, so I'm happy with that. I've drilled 1 million holes to put some plug welds in. Like, I've really gone to town. Let's face it, it's a windscreen. I would like it to stay in place. And I've cleaned up the outside edge and the inside edge here, which is a bit hard to see, but I've cleaned it up and ground off any of the dags and so on. So I think I am ready to plug weld this thing in. Now normally I'd do the holes bigger than this, but it's a narrow band that I'm working with. So I've drilled a lot of them, and I'll just have to do the best I can. I normally like to get in and put a reasonable amount of weld in there. This I'll have to just go in deep, fill it, and then come back out again. So I'll keep it very well clamped so I don't get too much distortion, and I think that should be good. So I'm going to go from here across to here in one fell swoop. I've cleaned this up, ground it back a bit. I'm actually not going to bother replacing it because it's all going to be rebuilt anyway with what I'm doing. So I'll worry about that as a separate thing. And there we have the first piece. Now I just ran a straight edge along it, and I have to say that it is quite within tolerance, or within tolerance of being able to be adjusted to be spot on. So as I do that through there, there's a little bit of a waver up around this area, which is just a little bit of a hammer. We'll fix that. So that is well and truly locked in there without doubt, and you can see plenty of penetration through there. So that size, these ones here are a little bit light on, but that size hole works absolutely fine. So I'm going to do the top and the sides, and then we'll come back to the corners. We'll have to individually make those up. Very happy. It's got to be rock solid, and I think the plan is working. Just as a point, don't ever weld over paintwork, obviously, or especially glass, because it burns your glass. It will literally melt the glass, and you can see this just from all the little ball bearings that come off, specifically from flux core, but other types of welding, normal MIG does it as well. I melted glass on Toxic, which I replaced. This is only epoxy primer, so I don't care. That's all part of the parcel of this, but always be aware of that. I got all the flat sections or the straight sections sorted out. So the only thing I need to do now is the four corners. So same process right the way through. I did end up cutting this one in the middle rather than doing it as a single piece because it sort of wanted to argue with me a little bit. So where there's slightly wider or slightly narrower, I'll most likely go through and just clean it up with an angle grinder with a flap disc just to get it consistent. If it's not going to be seen, I'm not going to worry about it too much. So I need to really think about how much it's going to be seen, and then I'll put the effort into there. I will need to go through and just tap it straight in a couple of areas, but that's not going to be a problem. This is 1.15 millimeter sheet metal, by the way, if you're interested. It's the same stuff I use for all my bodywork, which I think from memory is 20 gauge. So tomorrow I'll make up cardboard templates for the four corners, and I'll put those in, and then I'll butt weld them together in this area, and then I'll go through and make the thin slither to go in the front. And I think that's thin slither. I'll be able to adjust any minor inconsistencies out between the two. If there's a tiny little air gap between the two, that doesn't matter. So I'll be putting it on in the same method by plug welding it. So I'll drill the thin strip and plug weld it onto this one, and then hopefully I've got it all right. Time will tell. I'm going to start templating up now. It's a bit late to do any cutting or anything, and I don't really want to use hand shears. So I'll just get this templated ready for tomorrow. So I've just got a piece of cardboard here. Just trying to work out the best way to use it. Maybe like that. So I'll just push a bit of a shape into it with my dirty old fingers, just so I can get something happening. And give it a little trim. And what I'll probably do is cut a piece of sheet metal that is actually chunky in the middle like that. so that, and I'll trim it up once it's in there. So I'll weld it in as a big piece rather than a thin slither. I think I've got more chance of controlling warpage, twisting and so on when I'm putting it in. But I don't think the heat from the weld is really an issue. It's just, I don't want it to twist out of shape and go off kilter throughout the process. So I'm trimming this to the outside, but then I'll sit it on the inside and make sure it's right. And if I'm lucky, it might even fit the other side. So that's good enough. Where does it go? Yep, that fits pretty well. So if we just do that, pretty much I need it to be about that big. Whooshka, like that. So I'll mark that as side 1. But what I'm going to do is have a look at side 2 and see if I can use it over there as well. So I'll use the back of it if that is the case. So pop that there. So you've got a bright light in your face, don't you? And we'll see if the opposite side is going to fit over here. And yep, that is almost perfect. I may have made the piece coming down just a tad shorter, so we'll see. I can probably see the mark there. Yeah, so this side needs to be just a little bit longer. So this is side 2. So side 2, I'll make a piece that looks like that. Side 1, it's just a little bit shorter. And then I'll do the same process for the top corners as well. And I'll cut that out tomorrow. Got a bit of metal cleaned up there. And this is the template for side 2. And so I don't go wasting too much metal here, I'm going to cut that whole piece out. But what I'll do is I will grab my template. So this is the upper part of the window. This is the lower part of the window. So once I've cut it out, then I'll use this piece in here to make this one. That way I'm not throwing metal away unnecessarily. This is where I'm at. I've got that top corner done. There was a little bit of misalignment here, as in this is my 20mm, that's a little bit narrow. That's not going to matter. So I put a piece in like this and then welded it in place and then went around and cut it out, which I haven't done with this one yet, obviously. That was actually the middle piece out of that one. And then over here, I've got this one clamped, ready to go. And what I need to be very careful of is that because there's a rolled edge on the back of this, when I clamp it, the bit of metal wants to sort of twist out of shape. So I'm just being careful with that. So I've got it clamped on either end in the first place, and I'll put welds there. And then I've got to try and spot weld it or plug weld it through these areas. This particular corner is a little bit tricky because it's a little oddly shaped inside here. It's a little bit hard to show, but it's very curved through here, so as in down that way. So when I try and put this here, it pulls down. I need to be careful not to force it, because if I force it, then it could distort out of shape. Bearing in mind that this is just the first layer, and then the second layer will go on top of this, and I'm hoping that the second layer, or I'm not hoping, I'm planning that the second layer will be the one that I can get all true, because this one, there's a little bit of bit of differences in it, so a little bit of waving and so on. So I'll sort that out. And I've also gone through and ground down all those plug welds that I did. So I used a grinding wheel in the first place, and then I used a little 36 grit on a die grinder. So it's coming up well. So I'll get that one welded in. I'll get this one done, trim them all down, and then we can get on to putting the outward piece on. I measured out 20mm from the body line there, put some marks, join them up, just freehand it, and now I'm going to go around and cut that and that's my 20mm lip from there to there. Might not be absolutely perfect, but it really doesn't matter. With all 4 corners trimmed up and done, I've gone around and started making some pieces for the outer layer. So I've done these 3 corners, and I've literally just got a piece of scrap. I got my cardboard templates that I used originally, just repurposed them, made them a little bit smaller because the outside is a bit smaller than the inside. And then I've just got some metal, and just with my shears, because it's a bit late and I don't want to make too much noise, but also because it's a bit easier to do neat cuts with these than it is with an angle grinder. And I've just gone through and I'm just sitting them in there. So this one needs a little bit of a trim in a couple of spots. So I simply held it there and put the marker up against it and marked where it needed to be. So I'll just take some little slithers off here. I'll let them fall on the ground so that they can stick in my shoes later. And then once I've got them fine tuned, I'm just clamping them in place so that I can come back. That's good enough. So I can come back and do the straight strips. And at this point in time, I'll go through and I'll mark out where my 20mm needs to be. So I'll trim that up and so on. As I've said multiple times, there's a garnish mold that goes on the inside, so nothing will be seen in there. And through here, I want a nice, neat, consistent 20mm flange from this line down to here. So using this outer one, that's what I'll shape to get it right. So I know that I've got to take a little bit off this top piece here. I've got a pen mark there. It's a little bit wide at the moment. And I'm literally measuring from a point, running my straight edge through there, drawing a line. And I'll do the same thing right the way around. And what I intend to do, pardon me, what I intend to do is wait for my compressor to turn off. But otherwise, the gap through here, if it's not absolutely perfect, I'm not worried about that because I will be plug welding these onto this flange, but I'm also going to go through and fillet weld in through all of this gap right the way around and then grind it so that I've got one piece through there. And then we should have a good solid base to put our glass onto. And I did grab some of my glass from outside before. It's a bit hard to show you at the moment because the clamps are there, but I was laying it up against the face of the screen here to see how well it was going to fit. And in fact, there was a couple of tweaks that I needed to do, and I'm sure there'll be some more that I need to do. But we're getting very close to having this all done. And once this is done and sorted, then I'll get it into epoxy. I'll probably just paint that on with a paintbrush actually, and then sand it back. And then I'll probably use some fiberglass filler in there, fiberglass impregnated body filler, just to clean up the lines. Because remembering 3mm of the top of this is going to be seen at all times. So I need at least that part around there and down 3mm to be really, really neat. And then the rest of it to be really flat for the glass to be accepted onto. So I will put epoxy primer on there, sand it, I'll put a bit of fiberglass filler, and at the same time, any little gaps that are remaining in my weld, which there will likely be some, I'll clean those up as well. And then we will sand that, and then we will re-epoxy that. And I'll probably just do that in the black epoxy when that time comes. But then I can move on to the 2 back windows and do the whole thing again. And speaking of the back, there's no time like the present. So I'm going to do this slightly differently to the front. So I'm going to make the slithers, and I'm going to just put it on the outside of the window, not on the inside. And I'll just make one piece and go around there. It's a slightly different setup on the back here, like it's still got the flanges and so on, but it's a deeper area through here. So yeah, and the inside, I don't have a garnish or anything to dress it up. So I'm probably going to get my trimmer to come right up to the window and do something fancy around there to hide it. So I don't need to worry too much about that because there's joins and so on there. And previously it was all just held hidden by the window rubber, or wasn't hidden at all. So what I'm doing, I'm simply just getting a piece of cardboard, going to hold it in place to roughly where it needs to go and trim it off. Now what I am doing, I'm going to try and do this corner and this corner big enough so that it can join together. In fact, I think I'll do it out of one piece of metal. That'd make sense. I'll do that all out of one. I'll do the other side out of one, and then a strip there and a strip there. Be less welding and less mucking around. So in the first place, I'll just make something that will fit close, and then we can fine tune it. So we'll just knock some of this off. If I haven't said before, these are just office stationery manila folders that I use. Why? Because I get them for free. In fact, I used to, and I'm going to run out of them one day. They're all old ones. Recycling at its finest. Pop that there like that. And I could always make it longer this way if I want to. I'll just have it join up to that. So I'll sticky tape that in place, and then we know that we've got from there to there at the very least. And what I'll do is I'll tape it, get it all good, and take it off and flip it over the other side and see if it's going to serve the purpose on both sides at the same time. And if it does, that's a win, because it'll also mean that my glass will be quite similar. And so far things have been pretty symmetrical, so that's good. So I've got that there. That side is different. The window is sort of, it tapers in like that, and it's not the same on that side as it is this side. So let's have a look and see how it does look on the other side. Reverse it. Not identical. It's interesting, isn't it? It's obviously had a dent here, but that's not it. It's a slightly different shape through there. So that's interesting. Actually, no, when I push it in, it's a bit closer. If I just trim it up a little bit, should be pretty good. I'm going to use the same template for both, and then I'll trim accordingly. And then I'm just going to do the same over there. And I'll show you once we're a step closer. New day, and just when we thought the rain had gone, it's back. So, oops. So what I've done, I've welded in this lower one, the outer piece, and I have welded in this one and roughly ground it back. So we now have a 20mm wide flange that's completely welded in. This side over here, I've put the flat strip in and welded it right the way along, a million tacks. I plug welded it a few times first, and then I just essentially seam welded it. So then that needs to be trimmed back to that line, and that will give me my consistent 20mm. And this side here I haven't yet welded in, so that's my 10mm strip that I've got on top of that strip there, the existing body line, and it needs to be plugged and then welded, and it'll look like that one. Then I can grind it up and it will be nice. So then I can continue up. So this corner piece comes around to here at the moment. Haven't got that one in, haven't done anything through there. So I'll get all that done, grind it up, and then realistically the outside of this entire front screen is done. I'm not going to lie, that was a big job. It was actually bigger than I thought it was going to be. Same amount of welding, same amount of cutting and so on, but what I hadn't taken into consideration was the fact that the glass that was in the truck, this glass, was never intended to lay flat up against this surface. It had a rubber that was movable, flexible, and it had some tolerances. Glass doesn't have a lot of tolerance, metal doesn't have a lot of tolerance when you put the two against each other. So to get true flat planes to be able to lay a nice flat piece of glass on didn't come easily. And to give you an idea, just here, this panel, the roof panel, and this panel are two panels. So this one sat over the top of this one. So there was a change throughout the whole plane that everything was on here and on the other side. Little things like down here, when you actually look along the bottom of the windscreen, when I hold this straight edge, this ruler here, you can see it's a nice flat plane, but then on the sides, it dips down, and it dips down quite a bit. And then it changes direction. And there was a difference in the plane that it was on through the corner. So it doesn't look pretty by any means, but what I've been trying to concentrate on is trying to get it so that I've got a nice flat plane to lay the glass on. And when I laid it there just a moment ago, this side is almost spot on. This side here, this corner just here, is higher. And it doesn't surprise me at all because the lip along here, I noticed this right from the beginning, shallows out all through here. So it's almost like when this panel was made, the lip wasn't as pronounced as what it is everywhere else, and therefore it became an issue. And then with this change in height. So this area right here, it rocks a little bit. And when I say it rocks, across the whole thing, I think it's only maybe rocking about 1 millimeter. So I actually think that my urethane, when I put it in, might be able to absorb those differences, but I'm going to try and do something here. I may knock it with a hammer, weld it a bit, grind it a bit, we'll see. But what I'm definitely going to be doing is, as I've said, putting epoxy on here. I'll just hand brush it on, and then once it's dry, I'm going to go through with some fiberglass reinforced body filler and really clean these planes up so they're nice and straight, and it will fill in some of the pinholes. I've tried to fill as many holes as I can. It might look on camera that there's a lot of holes here, but it's not. It's just low spots where there was spot welds and so on, and it's dark because the flux core leaves a dark coating there. So there's probably some holes, and I'll go through and just double check, but overall it's pretty good, and the fiberglass reinforced filler will help waterproof that. Because what I'm going to have is obviously my glass sitting on this with a 3mm gap, and then there'll be polyurethane covering everything where I've just joined everything I've welded. So there shouldn't be any water get in there other than the possibility of the bits that 3mm, and that's going to be the nice neat edge that I want anyway. So I'll go through and I'll really clean that up, and that'll be a bit of time. Other than that, I consider that a job done, and once I am at a stage that I believe that I will make some templates and I'll send them off with the other windows, probably all at the same time, and have the glass made up. And if you haven't noticed, it is raining here. We're meant to get 10mm of rain today, and it has been bucketing down. Back on these rear windows, so I'd previously made the templates, and I have now transferred the templates to nice cleaned up shiny metal, and well, I've started anyway. So this is one of the templates. So this is the inside, so the middle section of the window, and I've made up one piece of metal, and I checked it, trimmed it and so on, and I've worked out that it is identical to the other side, so these will go back to back like that, making it solid, and then I'm going to trim out the 20mm once it's in there. I think it will make it easier to hold the shape better. So with this, when it comes time to cut it, I'll cut on the inside of that black line because that will be exactly the same size as this. Over here, what we have is got the flange there, from the existing window, and I'm going to be welding this. So it's got to be sitting like that, and then I'll go through and cut it out. Got a nice deep recess there. So the reason I didn't do the front one on the front like this, I built it up to match the existing level, was I didn't want the metal work to keep coming out further and further and push the glass out ridiculously past the windscreen. Whereas this one, once the glass is in there, it'll be pretty much, it'll probably still be sunken, but it'll be closer to flush. But what I'm going to do, this will be here, I'm going to clamp it in place, but then I'm just going to weld it from the back. So I'm not going to plug weld it, just going to do some welds around the back to weld it onto this flange. I won't fully weld it, it'll just be some little fillets around here. And then what I'll need to do is, once that's all cut and put in place, once everything's finished, I'll have to go through and really fill this seam in, this gap in around here, so we don't get water in there. And I'm not sure, I'm either going to use seam sealer for it and do it really smoothly, or fiberglass reinforced body filler. So I'll have to make a decision on that, but that's a little while off yet. So I'm going to keep making these up and get them in. All 4 pieces made up there, and I've got weld through primer on the inside edge, and I've also done the same there, as well as cleaning it up on the inside so that it will accept weld neatly. So that should come up all right. And I have also brushed on some epoxy, like I said I would, onto the windscreen area. So it'll just assist in that filling of the pinholes, and also being able to get it ready to put some fiberglass reinforced body filler on there. So we're making headway. I've still got to clean up this side So grind these welds here and go through and do some hammer and dolly work on it to straighten it like I have there. What's happened when I've welded along here, not unexpectedly, it's pulled in like that. So this one's just tilted in. So what I'm doing is, not only am I trying to straighten it, I'm trying to get it so it's on the same plane right the way through here. But other than doing what you've just seen me do there, clean this up, I'll do work on the inside, but the reality is most of it's not going to be seen, so I don't need to do too much. But what I now have is a really nice, neat 20mm flange around there, so I can sit my glass into it. And the only other thing that I need to do is I'll just clean up around this surface a bit. I'll put some epoxy on this new metal, and then I'm going to put some fiberglass filler in here. And like a minimal amount, it's just to fill the joint. And I'll put it in there, pardon me, I'll put it in there and I'll probably just smooth it off with my finger, because that's about the contour I want. Well, now seems like a really good time to do something else. Let's jump on the dash. I haven't made any final decisions yet on the type of defrost demister vent that I'm going to put in. Haven't made any final decisions about the dash, whether the gauges will be here, whether I'll need these holes, whether the gauges will be over here. Haven't made those decisions. So I'm not going to touch anything here, but what I am going to do, because I need to fix this at some point in time, I'm going to just cut out a section through here and through there, and I'll just replace all of that area that's rusted. I'll probably fill the, not probably, I will fill these holes in at the same time. At some stage, I'm probably going to need to put different mount points for the garnish mold that comes around here, because it'll probably sit closer to the windscreen than previously because there's no rubber there now. So there was holes in various points where the garnish screwed into. I'll probably just have little standoff brackets that I'll make to fit in there. So in the first place, I'm just going to go through and mark out and then probably cut out. Then I'll just throw some steel in there. I won't take you through the process, but I hadn't mentioned what I was going to do with this previously, so I'll do that and then we can move along. And then after I've got that done, then when I work out what I'm doing with my vents, I'll just cut out and install those. I'm thinking of actually making the whole vent system. So making the section that comes through here with a funnel bit with a pipe that comes off the bottom to connect into the system. I have bought a heater demister air conditioner. I'm probably not going to be connecting the air conditioning up or using it anytime soon, but I'll use it for the heater and the demister. And then if at some point in time we want air conditioning, then I've got the whole system in there, and then I've just got to do everything else that's involved with air conditioning, but at least it'll be mounted and ready to go. I like air conditioning, but at this point in time, all I really need is a demister for certification for engineering. So let's get on to that. Quick progress update. So I marked out with tape where I thought I needed to cut it out. I tried to keep it away from these lines so that I don't distort that or have to modify it when I'm welding it in with my grind. So just kept it away a bit. And I just cut a couple of strips and then overlaid them, clecoed them in place, and away we go. So I simply laid one over the top of the other here, and that's how I got that angle. So I've still got to trim this one off to match that same angle, but that'll be good. And what I'm going to do now is just go through and cut out particular sections. I'll clean up edges and start welding it in. Got everything there welded in. It's come up nicely. Just got to go through and grind it back, and I think it'll be done. I've pulled out one of the pieces of metal from this side. Just got to get this other one without smashing my elbow. That's the other one. I'm preparing around the windscreen to put some fiberglass filler in there to get those planes all sorted. And while I was at it, I figured I might as well continue sanding out a bit further. I'm not really ready for bodywork yet, but I was interested to see. So I'm using 80 grit on a variety of different shaped blocks here. So flats and curved and so on. And really I'm using the largest block I can in any area, and I'm using it in a crosshatch pattern. So this way and then that way, and into the curves and so on. And I'm trying to maintain that crosshatch pattern. And you can see where we've got low spots. So all those areas here will need some body filler in them, just to skim, particularly around here. So you can see there's a whole bunch of little spots there. So body filler in all of those. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a light skim over all of that panel when the time comes, and that's probably how I'm going to do the whole thing. I know people feel funny, or sometimes feel funny, about seeing an entire car butted up in body filler, but that's what I'm going to be doing so that I can hopefully sand out some really big smooth panels on it, rather than little individual patches and then have, you know, areas around it and having to feather it out. So I'm certainly not going to be caking it on, but this black vehicle is not going to look black for very long. Once I get that started, the thing is going to look like I've caked it on, really. That's what it's going to look like. I'm just pre-warning you, okay? So don't get excited in advance. But really, I shouldn't be concentrating on this. I really should be concentrating on this so I can get those planes sorted. Because what I'm trying to do, get those flat, get the shape exactly right around the edges so that I can make templates for my glass, so I can get my glass made, or I can at least have the templates sitting there ready to go. Because I don't want to get the templates made or the glass made before I've finished the bodywork, in case things change a little bit. I have my fiberglass reinforced body filler here, and if you're familiar with normal body filler, but not familiar with this, then it's quite obvious the difference. This has got fibers in it. So this is actually fiberglass, it's not just body filler. And the reason for this, it's strong and it's waterproof. So that's what I'm using. So I've just stirred that up in the tin. I haven't put any hardener on yet. So I'll use my onion board for that. But I also like to add some fiberglass resin to it to thin it down basically. So it just thins it down, makes it more usable. And what I've done in preparation here, I've just run some masking tape around the perimeter of the screen, just to control where I'm at. And I am going to try to cover this whole surface, and then there's that curve in the lip there. And what I have done is I'm going to be using this plastic applicator, and this corner just here, I've just trimmed it. It was a square corner like that one. I've just trimmed it so that it fits nicely in there. So I can just go along and it'll just create a little bit of a curve. So I'll be able to run it along there nicely. And that's the theory. It's a bit variable around here, so I'll probably be building a couple of little bits on the corners up, and the rest of it I think is pretty good. Like this corner up here, it's quite shallow. I've pointed this out before, where these panels join, so it's actually got quite a bit of an unusual shape going on there. So I'm probably going to build a bit of that corner up out of this resin fiberglass body filler. Got the first lot on there, and you can see the quality of what I'm doing there. Like, I'm just trying to get it smooth. I'm not worried about cleaning it up too much. Don't play with product. Just get it on, smooth it out as best you can. If you play with it too much, you just run out of time. So I've got, what have I got? About 3/4 of it done. Just need to mix up a little bit more to get around here. And I'll let that harden up, and I won't let it get too hard. I'll get it, once it is sandable without clogging my paper, that's when I'll start smoothing it down. And what I'm going to use is one of these long blocks so that I can get long flat planes, because that's the whole purpose of what I'm trying to do here. If I don't get it on the first go, I may put a second coat on, or I may go straight to body filler after this, because this should give me, you know, the strength and the waterproof that I'm after. And a little bit of body filler, like a very slight skim here, is not going to be a problem, and then it'll be put back into epoxy before we go any further anyway. So I'll finish that up. Got nearly everything sanded off there, so all that is really remaining is the line around here, a couple of little spots here. So I'm going to have to put just a tiny little bit of body filler in there when the stage comes, because this is just a little bit sunken. I'm not going to put more fiberglass in there, but I will go through and just top it up with body filler. It'll be totally unnoticeable. But it'll finish off. Obviously I've still got to fix dents and all that sort of stuff. I'm just concentrating on the windows at the moment. And at the front, we've got all of this seam fiberglassed in. So it's really good. I've got to do a little bit more work in some spots, again with body filler. But this corner here, which I mentioned before, it's a little bit misshapen. It looks funny as it is at the moment, but from about here to here, it's just a bit funny. So I'm just going to shape that up a little bit more. And of course, a very important view with this is this side profile. I think that looks really nice. Very clean, sweeping lines. And when I have the glass made, I'll have it polished and the edges rounded a little bit as well, just to really finish it off. But I think it's going to look really, really tidy. I know it's going to look really, really tidy. Well worth all the effort. Beautiful. With this center bar removed from here, it really cleans the look up. And what I'm really trying to achieve with this is to clean up the lines as best as possible, and make it so that it doesn't stand out, as in the modifications don't stand out. I really just want the look where it looks simple and clean, but it's not really obvious what's been done. To me, that would tick the boxes, just to be able to look back and say that's a very nicely presented vehicle, but I don't really know what's been done to it. And if you know, you'll know. As far as my garnish molds go, I think they're going to work absolutely perfectly. If we sit this up here, then it's going to cover up that full 20 mil of steel that I've added on. Pretty close to it anyway. This garnish mold will also be painted black. Everything will be black, so things will blend in. What I'm going to do is get this completely mounted up and done, and that will help me determine exactly how big the black band around the edge of my glass is going to be, so that's as seamless as possible. But I think that's going to work absolutely beautifully. This garnish mold, I believe, will sit in closer to the body than it did previously because it hasn't got the rubber behind it, which makes me already feel that I'm going to have to make new mounting points for it, which will be quite simple, I believe. So I think that looks great. You can see at the top here some of the black, the back of the electrical tape. That won't be visible. It's because the glass is sitting lower down than what it should be, because it's not actually held in place. It will be sitting at least 3 millimeters higher than that. Well, that's great. Love it when a plan comes together. Well, I'm exceptionally happy with the way this is coming up. It is exactly as I had visioned it, and I'm really looking forward to having the glass made and having it installed. What you will have noticed by now, I would say, is that I've done more work to the body and it's looking a bit different. Certainly not finished, but I've made good inroads, more progress, as I said I would. So if you want to see how I've got to that stage and where I'm up to otherwise, you'll have to come along and watch the next video. So, as I always say at this point in time, your project is not going to build itself if you're sitting there watching me on YouTube. So, time to put the phone down or turn the TV off with the remote control. Jump up, go out to the shed, garage, carport, muddy patch, whatever you've got. Pick up the tools and start working on your dream car. Because it ain't going to build itself. But remember, do it safely. So until that time, I'll see you then. Stay safe.